All right, we're live on a Wednesday night. It's Panther-Lair Show here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Be joined shortly by none other than the Honorable Jim Hammett, also from Panther-Lair.com. He'll be tuning in to join the conversation. I hope you will be joining as well. Like we always do, we'll wait for people to roll in. I know I always tweeted out, and I put it on the message boards. We started 8:30. We started 8:30. And I assume that everybody knows that and realizes it and recognize, and tries to get here on time. But sometimes it just doesn't seem to happen. But you guys are rolling in, and so we'll go through the preliminaries here before we get started with the Pitt conversation. You know the website, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. That's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. You're going to find your football, your basketball, your recruiting coverage there, and everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. It's going to be right there at Panther-Lair.com. We've got on the front page right now video of Jeff Capel's media availability today, which was really, really good. It was like 24 minutes long. I actually, excuse me, still dealing with this cough. I actually probably 2 minutes before I sat down and pushed go live, I just now finished transcribing Capel's press briefing from today. Like I say, it was about 24 minutes. I'm going to tell you a word count. That equated to, including the questions, or at least parts of the questions, sometimes I summarize them, about 3,600 words. And I mean, it was great. I mean, Capel was really, really good. I think he's gotten really good over the last year or two. He's really opened up about topics. And so I highly recommend you go check out that video. And pretty much when this live stream ends, I'm going to go and publish the transcript online too, so you can read that. Or if Jim gets long-winded about something, I'll just, not ignore him. I'll still be listening, but I can go and post that while he's talking. So hopefully we can come up with a topic for Jim to discuss at length. Some might say ad nauseum, but I would say at length. Maybe they both mean the same thing. But hopefully we can come up with a topic for Jim to talk about for a long time, so I can go post that online and, keep it going like that. But anyway, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. Our YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, is where we have all our video content, our daily morning Pitt videos that you can get Monday through Friday, every day of the week, a little Pitt sports talk to start your day. These live streams here on a Wednesday night, our live post-game shows, and we will be live after the game tomorrow night. I'm hoping it starts by midnight. It might be later than that, depending on when I get back to the studios here from Acrisure Stadium. But it's going to be a late one. It's going to be a late night. We're going to do it. And we've had these late Thursday night, we've had these late Thursday night games before, in the late Thursday night post game live streams, and people have showed up for it. So I'm highly looking forward to what we have tomorrow night. Hopefully we have a good crowd. I'll have shots and beers. I hope you'll have shots and beers, and we'll all, celebrate or wallow together. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, you don't want to miss any of that content here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That way you will be tuned in for all of it. All right, let's bring in Jim now. Welcome our good friend Jim Hammett, live from Johnstown. Jim, what's going on in Johnstown tonight?
Not much. I was actually watching the Duquesne basketball game for a little bit. I think they're good this year, but actually they're losing right now.
What's the latest? Do you have a score update for us or something? You checking in with a score?
Yeah, they're down by 9. They're playing Princeton.
Yeah.
Do you miss the city game?
I mean, it's a chance to go watch a game on the road without having to drive very far. I don't know. I take it or leave it. I mean, I didn't grow up in Pittsburgh. I didn't grow up in Pittsburgh in the 1960s and 1970s, watching all the kids who went to Fifth Avenue High School, then go play at Duke. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't see it in its heyday. You know what I mean? The most notable Duquesne game I can think of is when Duquesne beat Pitt in Kevin Stallings year. So it's not exactly like this game means a lot to me. I never really cared that much about Duquesne. Duquesne has never really been that good in the time since I started following or reporting on Pitt. I know that we're told how important it is and how much it means and how much it matters to the city, but whatever. It's just never really done anything for me, other than it was a road game that was like I could drive 5 minutes from my house and I could get to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to a couple. I covered one or two. I mean, they're fine. I mean, it's
yeah.
It is what it is. I mean, I think it would almost be better on campus. Like, I feel like Duquesne, like with their new arena, would probably get rocking. Like, kind of gets lost in the at the console or
Yeah,
PPG.
that's a good point. I want to say, I'm trying to think. I'm sure I covered at least one city game. Yeah, I've covered city games at the AJ Palumbo Center. I mean, to me, it just sort of there wasn't a big difference in covering those games. There wasn't a big difference between Pitt Duquesne and Pitt Robert Morris. You know what I mean? Like when I would go out to the Soul Center in Moon, I mean, it was about the same. Oh, it's cool to be in this different gym, and it's close, and it's this small, dumpy old gym, and that's great. And it's just otherwise, I don't know. It never really moved the needle for me. ZC717 says the only exciting city game I remember between Pitt and Duquesne was a game in 2009 when they played in the last year of the Civic Arena, and the game went to double overtime, I believe. I'm not going to look that up. Do you want to look that up to confirm it? I don't know if it matters. I'll take your word for it. ZC717. Jim, do you want to fact check that one?
I mean, I can. I have no recollection because like Pitt would have been good at that point.
Well, I mean, if it was 2000, if ZC717 is right about the year, it would have been right, like probably like December of 2009, right? So that's the year after like Young, Fields, and Blair left. Because the Elite Eight year was 0809. So this would have been the following fall after those guys were gone. So I think there was some transition there. It wasn't like the Blair Young Fields team went to double overtime. If it happened in 2009, like you say.
Yeah, it 67-58 double overtime. Let's see.
JB Dixon ball 67-58 in double overtime. Oh, good Lord.
Ashton Gibbs led with 15 points for Pitt.
Right. So I mean that makes sense. You know, I mean he was the sixth man. He was the shooting spark off the bench the year before, but he had to step into a lead role that year. And so, maybe it's not a surprise that the game went that deep, but good Lord, 67-58 in double overtime.
Yeah, that's impressive.
There was a board thread today about, one of these classic sports topics. If you could add a Pitt player from the past to this team, who would you add? And I opined, I mean, somebody even said at one point, like, there should be a rule in these games that you don't pick like an All-American. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to pick Charles Smith or DeJuan Blair or whatever. But I chose Blair because honestly, I think if you put DeJuan Blair on this team, they might average like 90 points per game. You know what I mean? Like between the offensive rebounds and his finishing ability, and I think his game would translate however many years later. This is 14 years later, 15 years later. I think his game would still translate because he was just that much of a freak that like with the offensive weapons that they already have on this team, having him collecting offensive rebounds and finishing in the paint, they might average 90. I mean, they scored 86 the other night and didn't really have to work too hard to do it, missed a lot of shots and still scored 86. I mean, it would be pretty sick to think of what DeJuan Blair would do on this team or a lot of teams, really. Probably last year's team too.
Yeah, I mean, I think what our biggest concern with this team right now is rebounding, and like he's walking 15 rebounds a game. Like he did that in the Big East. I mean, like he would crush it on this team. Even the game of college basketball has changed a little bit, but he would still be awesome like right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. It's interesting. I mean, we can, just start off with basketball because it's fresh on my mind because I just finished transcribing Jeff Capel from today. But it's interesting you mentioned rebound. We talked to Capel about rebounding a little bit, and I'm bringing up the ACC stats right now. Pitt actually leads the ACC in scoring margin, plus 29.67 per game. That's pretty, or is that, yeah, that's on average. But I wanted to look up the rebounding stats because I think they've done fairly well. They actually lead the ACC in rebounds, averaging 50 rebounds per game. And they're second in the ACC in rebounds allowed, averaging less than 30 per game. So rebounding margin, they actually lead the ACC right now. Now, I mean, there's something to be said for level of competition. Florida Gulf Coast was the biggest team that they've faced and probably the biggest challenge on the glass. And even then, they still... thought I had the final stats there. They still won that rebounding battle rather handily, but early going, 3 games, small sample size, they've been a pretty decent rebounding team, which I kind of thought would happen. I think when we talked about this team over the summer, I thought there would be kind of a group rebounding effort. You know what I mean? That it would be Fetty and it would be, Guillermo and Blake to some extent. But you would get good rebounding out of Zach Austin. You would get good rebounding out of Ishmael Leggett. These guys are good rebounding wings, and Leggett's a good rebounding guard. And I think that's actually come to fruition. Zach Austin and Will Jeffers combined, they had 10 rebounds on Monday night. I think you're seeing that group rebounding, and it's showing up in the team stats where they're leading the conference in rebounding advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the stats from the other night. They play about 9 guys. 7 of them had 4 or more rebounds. So, like, that's one of the things we're talking about. It's gang rebounding. Everyone has to go do it, and they did it. And that was actually a pretty good game for them, or a good simulation, because Florida Gulf Coast seemed pretty good, and they were pretty big. And that's going to be, they're going to see a lot of that. So the first 2 games, it is what it is. But like that was a good test for them. I mean, that team went into Indiana and kind of pushed them a little bit. So I knew Pitt was gonna get a game, and I was impressed with how they handled it. I mean, like anytime Florida Gulf Coast would cut it to 8, somebody would make a big shot. Like they always kept them at arm's length, and scoring's not a problem for this team. I mean, they are never going to be lacking for offense. The shots are flying, and the one thing I really like about this team is they don't have many turnovers. So there's every possession's a shot right now, and that's for a team like this, when they can get hot, that could be dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting the way they were able to push Pitt. But even to your point about Florida Gulf Coast made a run in the final 7:20. I'm just kind of looking over the sheet here. Pitt was up 15 with 7:20 left to go, and Florida Gulf Coast went on a 13-3 run and cut it down to a 5-point game with under 4 minutes to play. That would have been a real highway to the danger zone for previous Pitt teams, maybe even last year, particularly early in the season. Like last year, if that happened in game 3, like I think that run continues. And over the final 4 minutes, Florida Gulf Coast takes the lead and pulls away. But instead, Pitt came out of the media timeout. Bub Carrington hit 2 free throws. Fetty hit 1. Ishmael Leggett drove for a basket. And then Leggett got out in transition, and Fetty finished with a dunk. And all of a sudden, Pitt was back up 10 points in the span of about a minute 15. I mean, it got close. Florida Gulf Coast went on this 13-3 run, and then Pitt just answered, just boom, basically with a knockout blow of like a 7-2 run to basically put it away again. It was impressive, and I agree. I think Jeff Capel really liked it. I think he liked having his team pressed. I think he liked having his team sort of under pressure. I shouldn't say press, because I mean they weren't pressing really, but I mean under pressure. Facing some challenges in the post. I think it was a good experience for Guillermo Diaz-Graham with the, it's kind of, I think he learned some important lessons about defense and what he needs to do a little bit better going forward. And they still, again, they ended up scoring 86 and winning by 12 in a game where I don't think there's anybody who would say they played their best game. I mean, it was far from it, particularly on the shooting end. And I think they will be a better shooting team. So it's like, this was sort of what happens when their shots don't fall. They still scored 86 because they converted like 67% inside the arc. It's a team that knows how to finish. And yeah, I agree. It was an impressive win. What else stood out to you? I mean, we'll talk a lot of hoops, of course, over this hour, but what else stood out to you in that game?
I mean, just the ability of this team right now that's standing out is I think they have 3 guys that on a given night can score 20 or more points. And I think that's impressive. And I think on some nights 2 of them might be able to do it. I mean, I think right now what you're looking at is I think Carrington, Leggett, and obviously Henson they can score, and they're going to score a lot of points this year. And I think Pitt's going to be a fun up-tempo team to watch. I mean, we saw a little bit of it last year, but I mean, I think I even remember we interviewed Nelly Cummings during like the basketball tournament, like before that whole thing. And he even said, he's like, these guys are they're a lot faster than us. Like they're quicker. They're like these, like we were good, but like these guys are really athletic. And I think that's really showing. And I thought it was really good to see Jalen Lowe kind of step up and have a big game. So I think one of the biggest takeaways from that for me was he needed to hit some shots. He needed to get some confidence, and he did. And I think that's a good thing going forward.
Yeah. I mean, you said they have 3 guys who can go off for 20 any night. I think Lowe will be there. Like, I think what he did on Monday night is far more indicative of who he is than what he did in the first 2 games. I mean, he did that in 15 minutes. He scored 12 points in 15 minutes of play. I think as he continues to play well, Jeff Capel is going to give him more and more minutes, and I think his scoring will go up. I think there will be nights where he is Pitt's leading scorer. Like, I would say I wouldn't be surprised if there are like 3 games where he ends up as Pitt's leading scorer, which is saying something because Hinson's going to get his. Carrington has shown he's going to get his, and Leggett looks like a real scorer too. I'm waiting for Zach Austin to kind of, I don't want to say do something. I think, he's got a bunch of blocks so far. He had 5 rebounds in that game, 7 points the other night. It feels like he hasn't really broken through yet to what I expect. I mean, he was like high points guy, you know what I mean? He was like the go-to guy there, and he hasn't looked all that aggressive offensively. I think he's playing well on defense, although Jeff Capel has brought up twice about focus and concentration with him. So there's obviously something that needs to improve there. But I think Austin is another guy who has a chance. He could blow up in one of these games and really, knock down a few threes. His threes have looked really awkward so far and not really falling very much. But I think I feel like he's on the cusp too. I don't know. There's a lot to like about this team. Like you said, they played 9 guys. And as I look over this list of 9, I mean, I don't really know whose minutes I would cut. Yeah, I mean, they kind of cut Jorge's because he was in foul trouble, but like, I don't see this list slimming down. Like, I think they can go 9 deep with these 9 in ACC play.
I agree. And that's like one of the topics that kind of occurred to me this week is, last year you knew Nike Sabandi was the 6th man. You knew you put him in, that's instant offense. He's a great athlete. He can change the game really quickly. I don't know if they have a defined 6th man this year, but they have a lot of guys capable of having a really big game off the bench. We saw that with Lowe. Then the first game it was Jorge. The second game was Guillermo. So I mean, like Will Jeffress is never probably going to have a 20-point game, but he can impact the game with his rebounding, his defense. He just looks better right now. I'm more confident. Like when he catches the ball on offense, it's not like like it's like he's actually doing something this year. So I think they can go 9 deep, and I think the good thing with this team is you have so many different lineup combinations. Like even in that game against Florida Gulf Coast, I mean, I think the first substitutes off the bench were the Twins, and they left Hinson in. I like that lineup for offense. I mean, if you have both Twins out there and Hinson and any combination of guards, you're going to be able to score a lot of points. So I think they could do a lot of different things, and I think the 9 deep thing can hold to ACC play.
Yeah, I was a little surprised it went almost 7 minutes before they brought Lowe in. But Wolf HD actually asked a question along these lines: who's the most important bench piece on the team? Obviously, no Nike this year. I'd say Jeffress because of the defense and tenacity. We got scoring already. Like, I don't disagree with that assessment. I mean, I think Will Jeffress really looks like he's found his role. Plus minus stats are weird, but Will Jeffress was second on the team with a plus 14 in that Florida Gulf Coast game. I mean, he played so well. He only took 1 shot, and maybe that's the difference this year is he is content not to. He doesn't seem like he feels, and I mean, it's been 2 years since he played, but he doesn't seem like he feels like he needs to score. Like, he's perfectly happy being a great defender and a great rebounder. He had 2 steals, 1 block, 5 rebounds, no turnovers. He had an assist and a basket. I mean, that's a great stat line for Will Jeffress, in 21 minutes of play. And I think Jeff Capel, just talking to him Monday night after the game and then earlier today, I think he's over the moon about how Jeffress has played, and for good reason. I mean, I think he's an important part. So kind of like you were saying, like, and to Wolf's question of who's the most important bench piece, I mean, take your pick. Or like, what are you looking for? You know what I mean? Do you want your backup center? Do you want, a really unique matchup guy who can play at the 3 in Jorge? Do you want a point guard so you can move Bub Carrington off the ball, which I think that combination of Lowe and Carrington on the court together is just going to get more and more lethal as the season goes on. I mean, I love when, like, I think Bub does a great job as the point guard, for the first 7 minutes of the game or whatever it was, in this other game on Monday night that he did. But then once you bring in Lowe and Bub moves off the ball, and what they did, I'm sure you probably noticed it on Monday night, what they did a little bit, which they hadn't done in the first 2 games, is they used Carrington, Lowe, and Leggett all together, which was pretty unique. And I think part of it was due to Jorge being in foul trouble in the first half. So Austin needed a rest, so they went with the 3 guards. That is you give up a little bit on size, obviously, but that's a dynamite lineup. And I mean, you can attack in so many different ways if you have those 3 guys together. And I think if you have just Lowe and Carrington together, I think those guys are going to blow up. I just think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. You know what I mean? Maybe even more. Last year's team was fun to watch, but I think with the way Carrington and Lowe played, the way Leggett has played, Hinson is. I mean, Blake is going to Blake, right? I think it's just going to be a lot of fun. That's my analysis, Jim. Is it's going to be fun to watch this team.
I agree. I mean, I don't want to like get too ahead of myself 3 games in against 3 mid-major opponents, but they look really good. I mean, I think they were picked 9th in the ACC, and I think they're much better than that. I think this is going to be a really good year for this team.
Yep. Let's see. We've gone down the basketball path here. ZC717 says this coming week is going to be fun to watch. Florida coming up in Brooklyn and then potentially facing Baylor. So this Pitt team is going to get some early season competition. Let's assume they take care of Jacksonville on Friday night, Jim. They get to 4-0 and they go to Brooklyn. What's I mean, I know obviously the best case scenario is they win 2 games up there. 1-1, an acceptable result, though. I mean, obviously you don't want to go 0-2, but you okay with it if 1-1 if they don't look completely lost or completely played off the court by one of those teams?
Yeah, I mean, looking at Florida, I think they were picked kind of middle of the pack towards the bottom of the SEC. So I mean, I think that's a game you should go in trying to feel like you can win, and then you get your matchup with Baylor. I think they're ranked 21st right now, so you see what you have then. But I think it's going to be exciting because those games are on like ESPN2, ESPNU, stuff like that. So these first couple games they've been kind of hidden on ESPN.com, ACC, Extra, and Plus. It's going to be cool, like, whenever, like, they show the warm-ups and they're going to focus in on Bob Carrington. Like, hey, like, check out this freshman from Pitt. So, I mean, it's going to feel big time for this team, and it hasn't felt that way in a while.
Yeah. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really interesting. Obviously, they got to not overlook Jacksonville and go out and just, take it to the whatever they are's, and take care of business. I like, are you even going to be, you're covering that game for us, right? Jacksonville?
Yes.
Are we just going to sleep all day to try and catch up on sleep after a Thursday night game, or what's your plan of attack for Friday?
Yeah, I don't. It's kind of like the weird time of year whenever it's like football and basketball. So I have football, basketball, couple days Thanksgiving, then driving to Duke for the last football game. So like the next 8 days are going to be a lot of fun.
This little overlap period here is it stretches the time. All right, let's talk a little football for a little bit. We'll come back to basketball, I'm sure. But Biz is a super chatter. He jumped in early. He says, when football comes up, Nate Yarnell when? All right, Jim, lay it on me. What would you do at quarterback this week? Hopefully you came in with a plan on this. What would you do at quarterback if you were Pat Narduzzi this weekend?
I'd start Nate Yarnell. I mean, there's no value in hiding it anymore. I mean, Christian Veilleux is struggling and the team's still losing, and right now you're kind of just looking for answers, and maybe not so many answers, just looking to see what you have. I mean, I think you have to understand, I'm sure they have a good feeling of who Nate Yarnell is. They've been with them every day for 3 years, but I don't know, sometimes guys are gamers, and I think part of that was Christian Veilleux. I mean, I think he struggled in practice, and I think that was some of the hesitancy to put him in the first place. And his first game, he comes out and looks great against Louisville, and everyone's like, oh, okay. So, I mean, I think I've been writing for weeks now. I've been, on this podcast, I've been saying it. They have to give him a look just to see what they have, just to know what they have. You just got 5 games out of Christian Veilleux. He wasn't even able to finish 2 of them. I mean, the games got that bad. So I think it's worth seeing what the other guy can do. And you're not giving up on Christian Veilleux. I mean, I think he's still probably the odds-on favorite to be the starter next year, unless, whatever happens in a couple weeks. But you still need to see what you have with Nate Yarnell. That's kind of where I'm at.
Did you see my? I don't know if you how often you watch the morning pit, but I had a visual aid this morning. Did you happen to see it or catch wind of this? See this here? You know what these? You probably know what these numbers represent, right? I have to lay it out.
I didn't see this because I listened to it actually.
Okay.
Spotify, yeah.
So you're aware of it, right? That the top line is Christian Veilleux through 5 starts, and the bottom line is Phil Dracovic through 5 starts. And
yes.
For those who are also listening right now, Veilleux, 52% completion, Dracovic 51%, Veilleux 6.6 yards per attempt, Dracovic 7.3 yards per attempt. Veilleux 6 touchdowns, 6 picks. Dracovic 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. Now, that's not a perfect comparison I mean, Djokovic's 5-game stat line includes Wofford. It includes Cincinnati. It includes, I mean, let's just leave it there. It includes Wofford. Let's put it another way. It does not include one top 4 team, one top 10 team, and one top, where's Notre Dame now? I mean, they're still somewhere ranked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 3 out of the 5 teams that Christian Bear started against are ranked, right? One of them is a playoff team. Another one is the team that will likely face that playoff team in the conference championship game. And then the other is Notre Dame on the road. So it's not a perfect comparison. However, these numbers got Phil Dracovic benched, right?
Yeah.
These numbers are not that much better. And I think I think we've said this a bunch of times, and I continue to say it, and I continue to believe it. Like, Pat Narduzzi's not going to put up with turnovers. You know what I mean? Like, he will suffer a lot of bad offense, and he has suffered a lot of bad offense over the years, up to and including this season. But turnovers is where it's quite frankly why I was shocked that Phil Dracovic wasn't benched during or immediately after the West Virginia game. The turnovers, you know, and that was the thing. And so Veyer now, he had what, 4 picks at Notre Dame? Did he throw 4 interceptions out there? I want to say he was 4 at Notre Dame and 1 against Florida State and
1 against
Syracuse. So,
yeah,
and then the 2 fumbles, right? And all 3 of those turnovers against Syracuse lead to, I mean, it's a 13-7 game at halftime. Pitt is leading. They give up 3 touchdowns all off the turnovers in the second half, and that was where Narduzzi drew, put his foot down and finally drew a line and said, no, I can't do this anymore with this guy. This guy turns the ball over too much. I still don't know. All right, so you told me what you would do if you were Pat Narduzzi. What do you think Pat Narduzzi will do if he's Pat Narduzzi?
Well, it's interesting because it goes back to the comment on Monday where he says he doesn't discuss injuries. What injury?
That was really weird. I went back and I went back and watched the tape, and I don't see, like, it doesn't look like Christian Bear ever gets hurt. They never showed him on the sideline receiving medical attention. I didn't rewatch the end of Nate Yarnell's second drive to see if he got hurt at some point. But if there's an injury situation, a lot of times we don't know about it, but we really don't know.
We really don't know
about this. I don't know what could have happened. But even before that, he left the door open on. All right, so I made a big deal about him leaving the door open on Saturday, right? That he said, we'll watch the tape and find out about who's going to start. Maybe somebody was already hurt at that point, and that's why he left the door open. It was uncharacteristic for him to leave the door open, right? I mean, that jumped out to you too. So maybe somebody was hurt at that point. Maybe somebody did get hurt in that game. And I don't know. Did you see anything? Did you notice anything at the game on Saturday? You were up there. You were at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. By the way, terrible vantage point. I think I texted you at one point. I feel like I need to watch the game because
didn't I tell you this? Didn't I say haven't I said all summer and all fall about how terrible it is to watch a football game in that stadium? Didn't I said this, and I bet it's just as bad at Fenway, and it's just bad at every baseball stadium that they try to have a football game in, because you have to set the field up the way they set the field up, and the press box is behind home plate, which puts you in an end zone. And there's no worse place to watch a game, all due respect to the students, but there's no worse place to watch a football game than the end zone, you know?
Yeah. So
but anyway.
With that in mind, I didn't see any injuries. And in the press conference after the game, I think he was asked what led to Christian being benched. He said he had 3 turnovers.
Right.
He didn't say Christian got hurt.
Right.
So I don't know. So what's Pat Narduzzi going to do? Does he punt to Frank Signetti? That's what he usually does when he gets asked quarterback questions. So I don't know. I mean, if I had to bet, I guess Christian's going to start, but I don't know. I mean,
well, if he defers to Frank Signetti, Phil Dracovic might start in this game. Honestly. We were conceiving of this today while we were waiting to talk to Jeff Capel. We were talking about how it would be great if they come out on 4th and 1 at the 2, and they bring in Phil Dracovic in a Wildcat, Nick Patty, Florida State 2020 goal line type of situation, but then they run a trick play, the new Philly special. All right, with Phil, lining up as the quarterback. He's gonna run it. He's gonna smash it in, goal line, tush push and all this stuff. But no, wait, got to check. They snap it to Sebo. What we couldn't decide is who's the receiver who comes in motion, gets the pitch from Sebo, and throws the touchdown to Phil. Like, what receiver are you putting the ball in his hands? Aaron Matthews was a quarterback at Clareton, so it made sense to do it with him back in 2019. What receiver would you use in this situation?
I don't know, because there's not like that obvious. Last year I think they did it with Jared Wayne, like a couple of those, or he threw some passes, and he was also like a quarterback like when he started high school. So
right,
like they've always had like one receiver. I think even Jaden Bradley was a quarterback at one time. So like the Pitt wide receiver room has always had one. So I don't know who would be this year. Maybe Bub.
Yeah, that was the most common. Somebody said, I forget who said it, maybe Stephen Thompson or somebody said they've seen Bub throwing the ball in practice, like just during warmups and messing around, and he's got a real arm, so maybe. But I don't need arm strength. I need accuracy. You know what I mean? You've got to throw the ball. Even Aaron Matthews didn't make that good of a throw. Kenny kind of had to roll down to make the catch in that UCF game. But yeah, Philly special, huh? With Philly Dracovic out there now. Over under. Somebody brought this up. Steven might have brought this one up too. Over under 1.5 touches for Dracovic in this game tomorrow night.
Under. I mean, I don't think they're gonna like make it a point to get it like, oh, it's Phil's last game against his old, like that kind of like storylines, off the table. I mean, I don't think they're gonna try to get cute. I mean, I think he did touch the ball once since being benched. They did like a QB sneak with him.
Yeah. The Florida State game, right? It was a home game.
Yeah.
I think it was the Florida State game.
Yeah.
Because he lined up and then quick ran over and got under center, and they put him out there. Almost started the play and they called a timeout, and then Pitt called a timeout. It's not like Florida State was like, "Oh no, who's 5? Look out! No, gonna call a timeout." No, Pitt was like, "Oh no, who's 5? Gotta call a timeout." And then they actually still ran the play, and they got it though. At least it worked. Imagine if they called a timeout and it didn't. Anyway, I would consider using him at the goal line. I mean, I'm still a fan of just lining up in the I formation and just trying to push your way in, but I would probably still use. I would consider using him at the goal line, like Nick Patty in 2020, but I don't know about much more than that. Bill Florigen's a super chatter, so we'll get to him before we mention our friend Chris Gates. Bill says, I think it would be difficult to evaluate either of the quarterbacks under this current offense or offensive coordinator. Seems every quarterback under this system has underachieved. That's something to consider. I mean, when we talk about, you got to find out what Nate Yarnell has, got to find out if you have a quarterback heading into next year, got to find out whether you need to go to the transfer portal. I mean, there's something to be said for this is a bad offense. You know what I mean? And it's an offensive line that's struggling. They had their 8th different starting combination in 10 games on Saturday. There's a lot of broken parts here, and putting any quarterback out there, I don't know if you're really giving them the best chance to succeed or the best chance for a proper, thorough evaluation. That said, I kind of go with what you said earlier, Jim. Like, give Nate Yarnell a real game. I mean, give him a full. His stat line in his limited appearances is perfectly good. It's like 68% completion, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. So every time he's gotten an opportunity, he's made a few throws and made a few plays. Give him a real opportunity in a real game against a real opponent and see how he plays. And nothing really has to change with Christian Bayer. I think Christian Bayer can be made to understand that they need to find out. They want to find out what Nate Yarnell has. I don't think you lose anything by trying that. Would you start Yarnell and play him the whole game, or would you? I think we talked last week. I know I've said it a few times. Would you like go quarter by quarter and like play one quarter, play the next, and then go back and forth for over 4 quarters? Each guy gets 2 quarters.
I mean, at this point, like I kind of know what Christian Bayer can do. I think I would go in just saying like, Nate, this is your game. Like I think from a mindset, like it would help him rather than looking over his shoulder right away. So I want to see him just run the offense. And to the point with the question here, it's like, yeah, there's no like real. If you're going to struggle to succeed with this offense and you still have some sort of faith in Christian Bayer, then maybe there's some value in not throwing him out there and not having him get beat down any further. Like he got his game experience. And it's going to be a big offseason for him. Like this game against Boston College has no bearing on what he's going to do next season, what he's going to do in the offseason. Like maybe there's some value in, okay, like, yeah, his confidence is a little shot right now. Maybe let's not play him so we can, kind of salvage him in the offseason.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's, like for all that I've talked about it and all that I've thought about it, I really just think it'll probably be 4 quarters of Christian Veilleux unless he commits like 3 turnovers. Like I kind of think the most boring, uninteresting, and that's no disrespect to Christian Veilleux. It's just eminently more interesting to see a different quarterback out there and see what happens. You know what I mean? Like just on virtue of seeing something different for a bit, but it's going to be the most uninteresting outcome, which is probably just playing Veilleux again. It's not what I would do. I don't think it's what you would do, but what do you do? I don't think it's what Chris Gates would do either, to tell you the honest truth. I think Chris is probably on board with this as well. He hasn't told us, but we do know that the Wednesday Panther-Lair live show is sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. If you have a health or fitness goal and you need help achieving it, you visit chrisgatesfitness.com to learn more about how online fitness coaching works and how you can benefit from working with Chris. And Chris will work together with you to create a fully personalized exercise program and pair it with a customized nutritional strategy that works you towards your goals. And he'll be there every step of the way to support you through the process, whether you want to build muscle, burn fat, develop more functional strength, train for a sport or event, or just generally develop healthier lifestyle habits. Online coaching is one of the fastest and most efficient ways to get you from where you are now to where you want to go. And Chris loves working with fellow Pitt fans. He's a diehard Panther fan himself. He's a subscriber to the Panther-Lair podcast and Panther-Lair.com. So go to chrisgatesfitness.com, Chris Gates, Gates, fitness.com to learn more. Be sure to mention Panther-Lair when you apply. You know what I found today, Jim? And I didn't find it. Somebody else found it and they put it at my desk. I don't know who in my house did this.
Oh, wow.
Can you see this?
Oh, yeah.
This bad boy? The
Blast
Compass Bowl mini helmet. I want to say this was the second year of the Compass Bowls, but it might have been the first. It doesn't have a year, so maybe they gave him out multiple years. But I mean, they went all out. I mean, this is like, it's not just you don't eat ice cream out of this kind of helmet. You know what I'm saying? Like this is what you put on your hard hat. You know what I'm saying? Like this is shoot. It's like this is the real deal. This is a real helmet. So it got the straps and everything on the side. Like the BBVA Compass Bowl did not go cheap. It's padded on the inside. It's nice and soft. So anyway, thought I'd show that to everybody. That's always fun to see. Let's see. Homer Simpson says, seems like Pat Narduzzi is finally on the hot seat, getting pressure from the athletic director, not only privately, but publicly. You could tell from his interviews this week, changes will be made. So you saw the statement Heather Light gave to the Post-Gazette, I assume, right?
Yeah, they're going to move forward with trying to improve football. I forget the exact wording or something.
Did that seem in any way to be pressure from the athletic director, from the director of athletics, as it were? Did you take that to be pressure?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
I didn't, great reporting or whatever to get the quote and everything, but like, I didn't need confirmation to know Pat Narduzzi was coming back next year, and I didn't need confirmation to know that he needs to make some staff changes. I don't really think he's up on the hot seat in any way.
No, I don't either. I think, this is the kind of season that moves you closer to it. Doesn't necessarily put you on it, although we'll see, what the feeling is going into next season. I can't really make this any clearer than I already have on the message boards. And I think if people either are going to believe it or not, and they probably already decided ahead of time, I think there is such a small chance. It might be non-zero, but it's not more than like 1 or 1.5% chance that Heather Light would tell Pat Narduzzi what to do with his coaching staff. And I've said that, and people have argued with me about the message boards. And I think if you've already decided that she's going to step in and tell him to fire this coach or fire that coach, then you're already convinced and you're not going to change your mind. I don't think that's the case. I don't think she's ever done that. I think all she has ever done with staff changes is supported Narduzzi with whatever changes he wanted to make, and then tried to give him whatever resources he needed to make the hires that he felt like he needed. She's the head of the athletic department. She's the CEO of Pitt Athletics. She hires coaches to run the programs as they see fit. Her job is to find the right coach to run the program and then let that coach run the program. with the understanding that if the program fails, that coach will be held accountable for fixing it. And if he or she cannot fix it, then they'll be held accountable for that failure and ultimately be fired. And I think that extends to Heather Lyke and her position. Unless a head coach gets in like major legal trouble, I don't think just on the basis of wins and losses, the chancellor is ever going to tell the director of athletics to fire a coach. I don't think Joan Gable is ever going to go to Heather Lyke and say, fire Mike Bell, fire Pat Narduzzi, fire Dan Fisher, or whoever. I don't think she's ever on the basis of wins and losses. If there's something that happens that puts the university in a bad light, some unfortunate event or something, yes, then she may step in or have input. She's never going to tell him to fire anybody on the basis of wins or losses. And I don't think Heather Lyke is ever going to tell Pat Narduzzi to fire someone on the basis of wins or losses. I point to the example of basketball, which was much worse for longer than football has been this season. And she did not force any staff changes there. And someone pointed out on the boards, well, it's a little bit there. You have people who are directly responsible for things here. So the offense sucks. The offensive coordinator is the guy who's responsible for that. She's still not going to tell him to fire Frank Cignetti or anyone. It's like a 1% chance, maybe less. Do you disagree? Do you think she steps in and says, you got to make this change? Or do you agree with me that no, she's going to let Narduzzi make those moves himself?
Pat Narduzzi is in charge of his staff. I mean, not only Heather Lyke, I don't think many athletic directors would step in and do something like that. Maybe like the crazy athletic departments with lots of money, like maybe Texas A&M football, like they could tell their coach, like, hey, you got to make a move here. Kentucky basketball. For the most part, though, like the coach runs his own program, and that's it. Like I've never heard of an athletic director like forcing staff changes or anything like that. That's never happened before, and I don't think it's going to happen now. I mean, I think Pitt's going to arrive at some coaching changes in the offseason on their own, and it's not going to be coming from higher up.
Right. And to be honest, I don't think she should. Like, I think you let if Heather Lyke says, Pat, you have to fire Frank and hire whoever, Joe Moorhead or Joe Rudolph or somebody like that. Well, now she's on the hook for the performance of the offense. You know what I mean? Like she is now, no, you let the coach, you hired the coach that you believed could run the program. Or in the case of Heather Lyke and Pat Narduzzi, she extended the coach who she believed could run the program. So you let them run the program. And if it works, that's great. And if it doesn't, then you hold them accountable for it. But she's not going to tell him to make changes. I just don't believe it. I do believe he will make changes because it's not like he's ever shied away from making changes in the past. I mean, we can look this was the second time under Narduzzi that he hasn't had staff changes, from one year to the next. And almost every one of those instances, there were, guys were getting fired. It wasn't just guys leaving for better jobs. I think he's going to remove at least 2 coaches from his staff. And possibly more, and then might have to replace 1 or 2 who end up leaving for another job or something like that. But Narduzzi sees what we all see. I can't believe he's not blind to it. And you know what? I honestly think his approach with particularly the offensive coordinator is similar to Heather Lyke's approach with the football coaching. In that Pat Narduzzi, until he absolutely has to and feels like he has no other choice, does not step in, interfere, or meddle with the offense. You know what I mean? He doesn't like personnel decisions, coaching decisions, any of those kinds of things. He doesn't step in and meddle. And I think that's why Phil Dracovic started for 5 games this season, because Narduzzi didn't step in. And it was left up to Frank Cignetti, and Cignetti stuck with Dracovic through those 5 games. Now, that may be, even if he's taking the same approach as Heather Lyke, that might be to his detriment. Maybe he does need to be a little bit more of a micromanager and say, no, I want Rodney Hammond to have 25 carries. I want a quarterback change. I want this or that. But I think he has always deferred to his coordinators and the assistants on things like that. But that's sort of the same thing, like where, okay, I'm going to defer to you to run the offense, but if the offense stinks, it's on you. You know what I mean? You're being held accountable for it. And I think he will hold guys accountable for it this offseason.
Yeah, I mean this offense has been ranked in the 100s pretty much all season long, and Sean Watson offense was ranked similarly, and he lost his job. So I mean,
Right.
it's gonna happen. I mean, I'm not really like if not when. I mean, like it's gonna happen. So like that's kind of like where I'm at with that. And I mean, there's gonna be a couple assistant coaching changes, and I mean, there's even to the point if you're gonna hire a new offensive coordinator, maybe a couple of those coaches, you want him having his own guys. So I mean, there's going to be changes. I'm pretty sure of that. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to look a little different, whenever they get together for spring ball.
Just a quick glance here. Pitt is dead last in the ACC in scoring offense, total offense, rushing offense, not passing offense. They're 8th in passing offense. So they got that going for them. But they are the only team in the conference to average less than 20 points per game. I mean, it's miserable. It's terrible. They've actually Wake Forest has scored fewer touchdowns than Pitt, but they've made more field goals. Pitt has scored 25 touchdowns. Wake Forest has scored 24. But Wake Forest has made 14 field goals and Pitt has only made 8. So that's I mean, they are by any measure, any stretch of the imagination, the worst offense in the ACC. Sophie Cox wants to know if you had to create an ideal stat line for Nate Yarnell in tomorrow's game, what would it be? Jim, what's your stat line for Nate Yarnell, ideally?
What was his Western Michigan stat line? What, 13 of 17, 150 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions?
Boston College is like 12th, 11th or 12th in the ACC in run defense. Now, they just gave up 360 yards on the ground to Virginia Tech, and that's part of why they dipped so low. And Virginia Tech was able to get all those yards because they have a running quarterback that Pitt does not have. But Boston College giving up a ton of rushing yards. I think 200 rushing yards per game or something like that. Should they try to have a Western Michigan? If they went with Nate Yarnell, if they started Nate Yarnell and played him the whole game, should they try to have a Western Michigan game plan? Because I kind of think no. I think they should just go and try and win the freaking game and let him be a quarterback. But do you think they should try to have that Western Michigan game plan?
I don't know if they can. They've shown no ability to have like a sustained like, all right, we're going to run for 200 yards today. That's never happened this season. It's probably not going to happen tomorrow. I mean, that's been one of their biggest killers. It's like I thought they were going to have a good running game this year, and they just don't.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of it's the offensive line injuries, the revolving door there. But yeah, I mean, they don't have that to lean on. So I don't think Nate Yarnell can have the Western Michigan stat line. I mean, he just, as long as he takes care of the ball, if he plays, I think that'll be pretty good. I mean, just don't turn the ball over, and that's at least one step in the right direction.
Yeah, it'd be a huge improvement from there. Josh Newark on the basketball side says, how great has Capel done assembling this year's team? They seem to have really gelled. They seem to have gelled really early. Yeah, I mean, I think good transfer acquisitions. I mean, Ishmael Leggett looks like he's the real deal. We're waiting, like we said, we're waiting for Zach Austin. I really think a big part of it is, in terms of gelling, that linkage of just the guys who experienced it last year carrying it down to this year. And I don't know if you saw, I think I tweeted this out or I wrote about it or something. Last week I went to see Brandon Cummings sign his letter of intent to play at Pitt. And Nelly was there, Nelly Cummings. And so I talked to Nelly for a little bit and asked him just about how does Brandon fit in, this and that. And he kept saying things like, I think Brandon's going to be a good fit there because like we like to grind, we like to get after it, we like to work hard. That's what we do at Pitt. And I kept like, I'm like, this dude is using like first person plural, like present tense nouns, like, or nouns and verbs and stuff. Like he's saying we right now, like he's not a part of it. He's still very much a part of Pitt basketball. And I think that's huge because that, Jeff Capel talked about over the summer, Nelly and Jamarius Burton and Greg Elliott were working out with like Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe. I think those guys were doing more than just teaching them how to do a nice crossover or get into the paint. I think they were passing on some of those lessons about what it takes to really win at Pitt. And that was one of my big concerns was like, look, you had Nelly and Burton and Nike Sabandi and these guys providing so much off the court and in terms of keeping the team together. How would they replace that this year? I think they've replaced it by passing it on. And I think guys like Carrington and Lowe and Austin and Leggett have picked up on it, and that's helped them a lot. I think Capel said it today. Guys have understood their roles and they're playing their roles, and you're seeing the success they're having so far. It's pretty remarkable that after however many years, when Capel, first got here, of the team not being together, of guys not just doing their jobs and doing what was best for the team, they now look like they're actually really building something that maybe can last. I mean, I don't know what really lasts in college basketball these days with transfers and one and done, and you bring in a transfer for 1 year or a guy just is done. But they might be able to build something here if they can keep that sort of, Capel called it the DNA. If they can keep that kind of linkage going, they might build something that can last sort of year to year with this program.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just starts with this team with the guys that returned. I mean, I like, it's hard to probably not get along with Blake Hinson. Like, he's just this great personality. And, whenever Bub made that like logo 3, like you saw the camera and like Blake was going crazier than Bub. Like, that's just how he is. And so, like, if that's the team leader, it just sets a good tone for everyone. And like, I think like the Twins bring a lot of energy and like they're easy to get along with. Same with Fetty, and like Will Jeffress is a good dude. So like, when you have that in place and you bring in all these talented newcomers and see how they act, I mean, it's like, I think it just kind of happens naturally and organically. And I go back to the summer, I've mentioned this a few times, whenever like the Zoo crew kind of did their little training camp at the Pete, those guys were there watching them and they were playing with them and they were hanging out. And whenever they went and played in Wheeling, the whole team went and watched them. So like, whenever Nelly refers to Pitt as we still, like, I think that's a real thing. Like, I think like all of a sudden, like this program kind of became like just interlocked. And like I think Carlton Carrington said in the preseason, like he texts Nelly Cummings, like they're friends, like he can learn stuff from him, even though he's playing professionally in Europe. So I think if you have a line to that, I mean, I think it has all happened organically, but I think last year's group was kind of special what they did with just coming from different parts and just being connected so well. And somehow it's been able to grow without them here.
Yeah. I think they've had talent over the years Capel has been here, but the teams have just sabotaged themselves. You know what I mean? With either like locker room stuff or personal infighting, or guys just not just doing their job, like not being willing to play a role in the better service of the team. And they'll have stretches where some guys would really settle into their role, and all of a sudden things would start to gel and really work. And then they get out of that role and they got to be the man and they got to be the big scorer. And it just would sabotage. And I mean, I think people know most of the names we're talking about, but I mean, it was like a handful of guys over the course of those years. And last year, they were able to sort of stamp it out and really come together as a team. And then to pass it on is really, it's impressive. Mark Cerny wants to know, am I going too far to think Bub Carrington looks like a guard that used to kill Pitt in the tournament? I think he just looks like a really, really good guard. Really good a basketball player, great passer, shooter, dry. He's calm out there. I mean, he just looks really good. You sent a text to our Panther-Lair group chat this week of like, I forget how you said it. Like, am I missing something, or is he legitimately like a big time guard? And the consensus was, yeah, like this dude's for real. I mean, he hasn't shown too many holes in his game yet.
No, and like he was the 91st ranked player in the in the Rivals.com rankings last year. Like, he wasn't this big time recruit. Like, Pitt landed him over like Stanford and Loyola of Chicago. Like, it's not like they beat out Duke and Kansas, but last night was the Champions Classic and Kentucky played Kansas, Duke played Michigan State. Bub looks like one of those guys playing on one of those top 20 teams. He looks better than a lot of them too. Like, he would not be out of place running with Kentucky or Kansas. So, I mean, like, I think he is really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's the real deal. I do. There was something here. Homer Simpson says foul shooting is Pitt basketball's only concern so far. And that is a problem. As a team, they're shooting 59% right now. I think one big issue is who's taking some of the free throws. Like Fetty Federico he's 3 of 12 right now. Pitt as a team is 46 of 76, but 9 of the misses are Federico. The rest of the team is 43 of 64, which is still not great, but it's, up closer to 70%. Jeff Capel said today there's 3 guys who are not shooting well and need to shoot better. I would guess, just looking at the stats, he's talking about Blake Hinson being 10 of 15, Federico being 3 of 12, and Zach Austin being 2 of 6 would be my guess. Guillermo's 2 of 5. I think he'll be better than that. I think he was better than that last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he could step out and make 3. So I mean, he's like a completely different animal than like what's going on with Federico right now. I mean, he looks kind of lost when he's at the line, and it's not a good trend because he's going to log a lot of minutes. He's probably going to get fouled. Florida Gulf Coast, they kind of tried the hack-a-shack with him a little bit, and I'm like, that might happen this year unless he starts making them. So like that's going to be important. So Homer's right. Like that's definitely a concern, especially when the games get tighter.
Unless you're dumb about how you do it, like Florida Gulf Coast was, and they sent that Andre Weir, the Brittany Griner looking guy, to foul him, and he like really aggressively like almost tackled him. It's like, all right, first of all, that dude already had like 2 or 3 fouls at that point, and he was like kind of doing really well in the paint against Pitt. He ended up with 12 points, and it was all like inside the arc. It was all pretty close to the basket. So number one, it was like, no, don't use him. Use like one of the guards who has no fouls yet. But then number two, just tap him on the hand. Like don't, because he ended up getting called for a flagrant. Which was in that stretch that I talked about near the end of the game. He ends up getting called for a flagrant, and Pitt gets the ball back, and that's when Leggett drives and makes it an 8-point game. So you need to perfect the Hacka Fetty a little bit better. But yeah, if he keeps shooting 3 of 12, and he was 1 of 6 in that game, then it's not a bad strategy. You're right. Let's see what else we got here before we get to, looks like Josh Newark and Homer Simpson were just having a conversation amongst themselves, so we don't want to interrupt them. Peninsula P wants to know, Jim, you got a thought on Pitt volleyball against Louisville? It's a huge game. Rematch, right? Final Four rematch on Saturday?
It feels like every time like Pitt gets in one of these big games, like they haven't won it. Like they sweep every team they play, but like whenever I think their losses this year, I think they lost to Louisville already and Oregon. So whenever they get these like big top 10 matchups, it's like they haven't had a big win like that. So it'd be cool if they could do it. I mean, I don't know what kind of they're expecting a pretty big crowd on Saturday. They don't really move matches to the Pete unless they're expecting a big one. So it should be a cool atmosphere. I saw they had like Jeff Capel do a promo and tell people to come out. So I hope it turns out well for them crowd wise. And you have that. Both soccer teams are in the tournament, so a lot of cool things on Upper Campus right now.
Yeah, for sure. Pitt sports are going pretty well, other than other than the football program,
the big one. Yeah,
it's everything else is going pretty well for Pitt football. I wanted to bring up the transcript from Monday for this next question because I apologize on your name, Yeenan. Would you say Yinin, Jim? How would you pronounce that? Yinin?
I think the first one. I think he had.
All right. Well, either way, he says, "Hi guys, is Pat's response about either quarterback being injured was confusing? Why didn't anyone from the media ask for clarification?" So from the official transcript here, I'll just go through it. Question: who's going to be your quarterback on Thursday? Narduzzi, quote, "I don't talk injuries. I don't know." Question: are they hurt? Narduzzi, quote, "I don't know. Are they?" Question. Actually, this is all Jerry. All right, let's just,
I know.
let's Jerry DePaula. Let's say DePaula. Who's going to be your quarterback on Thursday? Narduzzi. I don't talk injuries. I don't know. DePaula. Are they hurt? Narduzzi. I don't know. Are they?
That's the clarification.
DePaula. You tell me. Narduzzi. I don't know. We'll see Thursday night. So that is asking for clarification, and that's about the extent of the clarification you're going to get. I don't know. Are they? Like, it's a real slapstick with these two sometimes. You know what I mean? Like real Laurel and Hardy type of stuff for Abbott and Costello, I guess. Jerry would appreciate that reference. I'll tell you that. Peninsula P says, if Yarnell shows out on Thursday, it might shift the narrative of how bad the season has been to a hopefulness for the future. How good would Nate Yarnell have to be on Thursday, Jim, for you to feel optimistic about the future?
If he wins the final 2 games and throws for like over 250 yards in each game, I'd feel pretty good about it. I'm not expecting that. Like, I doubt like the third quarterback they've been sitting on all year is just going to come in and light up the stat sheet. But like, I don't know if it. What would you say? Over 250 yards? Is that a successful day? I mean, that's
with like 2 touchdowns and no interceptions and a win.
Yeah, that
And
would
a
be
win.
huge.
I mean, a win. You know,
win most importantly.
maybe like 5 third down conversions, maybe 6. I mean, I don't want to get greedy about it, but let's see what else we got here. Hog Muncher says realistically, Narduzzi only has a year or 3 years left. Most college coaches would kill for as much time at one school as Narduzzi has had here. It just seems like he's lost his fastball. Yeah, I just feel like we're not that far removed from an ACC championship and a 9-win season. I don't know. It's one bad year. It's bad enough that it's allowing a lot of people the opportunity to change the narrative about what the previous 8 years have been, but it's one bad year. You know, if it continues over to next year, then yeah, we can I'll dive into the conversation about deep-seated problems in the program, but for me, for now, it's one bad year.
Yeah, I mean, I look at other coaches like him that like stay a long play. Like every once in a while, like Kirk Ferentz has a bad year at Iowa. Like Mark D'Antonio had some down years at Michigan State. Like if you're at a place long enough and you're not one of those Ohio State, Michigan programs where you can reload, like this is liable to happen. Like it can happen to you. I think you never wanted to bottom out this far, but he made a bad hire on offensive coordinator, and they guessed wrong on quarterback, and the whole season tanked because of it. Like that's what it is. Like I don't think this roster is a 2-8 roster, but they made some 2-8 decisions.
Yeah, and they should be fixable decisions.
Yeah,
right. I mean, they should be going forward. Going into next season, but we'll find out. All right, we'll call the live stream there. We appreciate everybody who tuned in and offered comments and questions and super chats and all those things. We'll be live again in about 26 and a half hours or so. Can't wait for that. That'll be something to look forward to, I suppose. And then Jim will have the coverage from the Peterson Event Center on Friday night from the Pitt basketball game. So we got a lot of coverage. Make sure you stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com to read all of that. Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, right here at YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our video content. We'll have a lot of it from the game tomorrow night and the basketball game on Friday night. Plus, we'll have the live stream and morning pits and all those different things that we always like to do. So tune in for all of that. Like and subscribe. That would be awesome. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Jim, thank you for hanging out. We'll see you tomorrow night at Acrisure Stadium. And we'll talk to you all after the game tomorrow night right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.